I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story from. I want to know how far it's traveled. My name is Jennifer Walsh, and I'm 46 years old. What I'm about to tell you will change how you think about the work that happens inside a home, the invisible labor that keeps families functioning, children thriving, and careers possible. The day I walked into divorce court with a 200-page financial analysis calculating the market value of 20 years of unpaid domestic labor, my husband's attorney looked at me with barely concealed contempt. "Mrs. Walsh," he said, his voice dripping with condescension, "this is a divorce proceeding, not a creative writing exercise. The court deals in facts, not fantasy." "These are facts," I replied calmly, sliding copies of my analysis across the table to the judge, to my attorney, and to my husband, David, who sat there looking smug in his $3,000 suit. Every number is documented, every hour logged, every service priced at market rate. For 20 years, I provided childcare, household management, administrative support, event planning, property maintenance coordination, and personal assistant services. If my husband had paid market rates for these services, the total cost would be $2,347,000. The courtroom went silent. Judge Patricia Morrison, a woman in her 60s who'd seen thousands of divorce cases, leaned forward with interest. "Mrs. Walsh, walk me through this analysis." And I did. For the next 2 hours, I presented the most comprehensive accounting of domestic labor that divorce court had ever seen. I showed that while my husband built a successful consulting firm and accumulated $4.8 million in assets, I had been working just as hard, just without a paycheck, without recognition, without anyone acknowledging that what I did had value. My husband claimed I had contributed nothing to our marriage, that I had been supported by him for 20 years, that I deserved minimal alimony because I hadn't worked. I was about to prove him spectacularly wrong. But to understand how I got to that courtroom with that analysis, I need to take you back to 1998, when I was 24 years old, freshly graduated from Northwestern University with a degree in marketing and absolutely convinced I was going to conquer the corporate world. I met David Walsh in the summer of 1998 at a professional networking event in Chicago. I was working as a junior marketing associate at Morrison & Pierce Advertising, making $38,000 a year. Good money for an entry-level position in 1998. I was ambitious, energetic, full of ideas. My boss had just told me I was being considered for a promotion to account coordinator. David was 26, working as a business consultant at Sterling Advisory Group. He made $52,000 a year and had dreams of starting his own consulting firm someday. He was handsome, charming, confident in a way that made you believe anything was possible. We talked for 2 hours at that networking event about our careers, our ambitions, our 5-year plans. I told him I wanted to be a creative director by 30, maybe start my own agency by 35. He told me he wanted to build a consulting firm that specialized in helping small businesses scale. "We're going to be a power couple," he said, his eyes bright with excitement. Both of us crushing it in our careers, supporting each other, building something together. I believed him. We got married in June 2000, a small ceremony at a vineyard in Napa Valley. By then I'd been promoted twice and was making $56,000 as an account manager. David had moved to a different consulting firm and was making $68,000. We bought a small 2-bedroom condo in Lincoln Park for $215,000, stretching our finances but convinced it was an investment in our future. Those first 3 years of marriage were good. We were both working long hours, both climbing our respective career ladders. We split household chores relatively evenly. I did more of the cleaning, he did more of the cooking. We had a cleaning service come twice a month. We were living the life we'd planned. I remember those years with a bittersweet clarity. Friday nights we'd try new restaurants in neighborhoods we'd never explored. Saturday mornings we'd sleep in, then spend hours reading the newspaper over coffee. Sundays we'd go to the gym together, then meal prep for the week ahead. We were partners in every sense, splitting bills down the middle, making decisions together, supporting each other's ambitions. My career was flourishing. By 2002, I'd been promoted to senior account manager. I was leading campaigns for major clients, a luxury car brand, a financial services company, a boutique hotel chain. I loved the creativity, the strategy, the satisfaction of seeing my ideas come to life in print ads and commercials. My boss, Karen Martinez, pulled me aside one afternoon. "Jen, you're being considered for creative director. The position opens up in 6 months when Tom retires. If you want it, it's yours. You've earned it." Creative director. At 28 years old, it was everything I'd wanted since graduating. The salary would jump to $95,000. I'd have my own team. I'd be shaping the agency's creative vision. I called David from my office, barely able to contain my excitement. "I'm getting promoted to creative director." "That's amazing, Jen. We should celebrate. Dinner at that French place you love?" We went to Le Bernardin that night, ordered champagne, toasted to my success, to our future, to the life we were building. David was genuinely happy. For me, there was no jealousy, no competition, just pride in my accomplishment. "You're going to be incredible in that role," he said, raising his glass. "You've worked so hard for this." I believed we'd always be like that. Equal partners, celebrating each other's wins, supporting each other's dreams. Then I got pregnant. It wasn't planned. We'd been talking about maybe having kids in 5 years, once our careers were more established. But in early 2003, I was 29 years old and pregnant with our first child. We had conversations about how we'd manage. Daycare in Chicago was expensive, around $1,800 per month for infant care at a quality facility. But we could afford it. My salary was now $72,000. David's was $85,000. Combined, we were making $157,000 a year. We'd be fine. Our daughter Emma was born in October 2003. She was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, David's eyes, my smile. I took 12 weeks of maternity leave, then returned to work in January 2004. Those first 6 months back at work were brutal. I was exhausted all the time. Emma didn't sleep through the night until she was 8 months old. I was getting maybe 4 hours of broken sleep, then going to work and trying to be creative and strategic for demanding clients. I was pumping breast milk in the office bathroom. I was missing meetings because the daycare called saying Emma was sick. I was hemorrhaging sick days and vacation time. My performance reviews started slipping. Not badly. I was still a solid employee, but I was no longer the rising star I'd been. I wasn't staying late for client dinners. I wasn't volunteering for extra projects. I was doing my job, but I wasn't exceeding expectations anymore. David, meanwhile, was thriving. His career was accelerating. He'd been promoted to senior consultant. He was traveling frequently for clients. And he could do that because I was handling everything at home. Picking Emma up from daycare, managing her doctor appointments, dealing with the 3 a.m. wake-ups. When Emma was 18 months old in early 2005, David came home with news. Sterling Advisory Group was offering him a senior partnership position, but it would require even more travel, even longer hours. The salary would jump to $125,000. "This is huge for us," he said, his excitement palpable. "This is the career opportunity I've been working toward." "What about my career?" I asked. "I'm already stretched thin. If you're traveling more, how do I manage work and Emma?" "We'll figure it out. Maybe we can get a nanny instead of daycare, someone who can do pickup and stay late if we're both working." A nanny would cost $45,000 a year. After taxes, I was taking home about $52,000. After paying a nanny, I'd be netting $7,000 a year. $7,000 for working full-time, being exhausted constantly, missing my daughter's milestones, and feeling like I was failing at both work and motherhood. It didn't make financial sense, but more than that, I was starting to question what I actually wanted. In June 2005, I found out I was pregnant with our second child. Emma wasn't even 2 yet. David was traveling 3 weeks out of every month. I was drowning. We had another conversation. A longer one, a harder one. "Maybe," David said carefully, "maybe you should take some time off, just for a few years while the kids are young. Once they're in school, you can go back to work." "Take time off? You mean quit?" "Not quit, Just pause. Think about it, Jen. We're paying almost all your salary to childcare. You're miserable. Emma's miserable. I'm making enough to support us. Why are we killing ourselves trying to have 2 full-time careers when it's not even financially beneficial? He made it sound so reasonable, so logical. Just a few years. The kids would be in school before I knew it. Then I could restart my career. What I didn't understand then, what David didn't tell me, or maybe didn't know himself, was that there's no such thing as pausing a career. There's only leaving it. Once you step off that ladder, climbing back on is nearly impossible. In August 2005, I gave notice at Morrison & Pierce. My last day was September 30th. I was 31 years old, 7 weeks pregnant, and leaving a career I'd spent 7 years building. "You'll be back," my boss told me on my last day. "This isn't goodbye. It's just see you later." But we both knew that was a lie. People who take time off for kids rarely come back, and if they do, they come back at entry level, starting over, competing with people 10 years younger. Our son James was born in March 2006. Now we had 2 children under 3, and I was home full-time with both of them. At first, it was an adjustment. I'd gone from having structure, schedules, measurable accomplishments, and adult conversations, to spending my days changing diapers, wiping noses, singing songs, and feeling like I was disappearing into an endless cycle of feeding, cleaning, and soothing. But I told myself it was temporary. A few years. I'd go back to work when James started kindergarten. Until then, I'd be the best mother possible. I threw myself into it. I researched child development. I created enrichment activities. I took the kids to library story time, to music classes, to the zoo. I made homemade baby food. I kept the house spotless. I managed all the household finances, paid all the bills, scheduled all the appointments, and I started doing something else, something I didn't even realize was happening. I became David's unpaid assistant. David's career continued accelerating. In 2007, he'd left Sterling Advisory Group and started his own consulting firm, Walsh Strategic Solutions. It started as just him, operating out of our home office, taking on small business clients. I helped him set up the business structure. I created his marketing materials, my advertising background finally useful. I managed his calendar, scheduled client meetings, sent invoices, tracked payments. I did this while also caring for 2 small children. "I couldn't do this without you," David would say. "You're making this possible." And I was. His business grew quickly because he could focus entirely on client work while I handled everything else. By 2009, Walsh Strategic Solutions had grown to include 3 employees besides David. Revenue was $850,000 annually. David was paying himself a salary of $180,000. We moved into a bigger house in Evanston, 4 bedrooms, 2,800 square feet, $680,000. Our 3rd child, Sophie, was born in 2010. Now I had 3 kids ages 7, 4, and newborn. David's business was booming. Revenue hit $1.4 million in 2010. He'd hired 6 employees. He was traveling constantly, speaking at conferences, building his reputation as an expert in business strategy. And I was home, changing diapers, packing lunches, managing carpool, coordinating playdates, planning birthday parties, doing laundry, making dinner, helping with homework, reading bedtime stories. Don't misunderstand. I loved my children. I was grateful I could be home with them. But I was also slowly realizing I'd become invisible. At the couples' dinners David's firm would host, I was introduced as David's wife. Not Jennifer, marketing professional. Not Jennifer, the person who designed your logo and set up your entire business infrastructure. Just David's wife. "What do you do?" people would ask at these events. "I'm a stay-at-home mom," I'd reply. "Oh, that's nice," they'd say, then immediately turn to talk to someone with a real job. David's business continued growing. By 2015, Walsh Strategic Solutions had 18 employees and revenue of $3.8 million annually. David's personal income was $420,000 a year. We moved again into an even bigger house in Winnetka, 6 bedrooms, 4,200 square feet, $1.4 million. We had a cleaning service twice a week, a landscaping service, a pool maintenance company, but I was still working. Not paid work. David was clear that I didn't work, but endless unpaid labor that made his successful career possible. I managed 3 children's schools, activities, social calendars, medical appointments. I coordinated all household maintenance and repairs. I planned all family events and vacations. I handled all gift buying for David's business relationships and family obligations. I managed our social calendar, RSVP'd to events, sent thank you notes. I was a full-time household manager, childcare provider, personal assistant, event planner, and administrative coordinator. I worked 7 days a week, typically from 6 a.m. when I woke the kids for school until 10 p.m. when I finished cleaning up from dinner and preparing for the next day. I had no sick days, no vacation days, no lunch breaks, no performance reviews, no raises, no retirement contributions, no health insurance in my name, no career advancement, no professional development, nothing. When James started kindergarten in 2011, I'd mentioned maybe looking for part-time work, something to get me back into the professional world, to keep my skills current. David had looked at me like I'd suggested setting the house on fire. Why would you do that? You'd have to pay for after-school care. You'd have to pay for summer camps. You'd have less time to manage the household. It doesn't make financial sense. Besides, the kids need you. Always the kids need you. Never what I needed, never what I wanted. By 2018, Emma was 15, James was 12, and Sophie was 8. All 3 were in school full-time. I'd been out of the workforce for 13 years. I tried. God, I tried to go back. I updated my resume, trying to explain the 13-year gap. I applied to marketing positions, entry-level positions, jobs I was overqualified for based on my education and early career experience, but underqualified for because I had no recent experience. I got 2 interviews. Both interviewers were younger than me. Both looked at my resume with barely concealed skepticism. So you left advertising in 2005? And you've been doing what since then? Raising 3 children and managing my household. Right, so you don't have experience with current marketing platforms, social media marketing, digital analytics, content management systems? Not professionally, but I've done extensive research and I'm a quick learner. We're really looking for someone with current industry experience. Translation: you're too old, too out of touch, and we don't value the skills you've developed over 13 years of unpaid labor. I stopped applying after 6 months. The rejection was soul-crushing. I'd been told my entire adult life that I could always go back to work when I was ready. It was a lie. The truth is this: when you leave the workforce to raise children, you don't pause your career. You end it. You become economically dependent on your spouse. You lose your earning potential, your professional identity, your financial autonomy. And everyone tells you it's a choice, that you should be grateful, that it's a privilege. It's not a privilege. It's a trap. And I was about to discover just how thoroughly trapped I was. In March 2019, David came home from work late. Again. He'd been traveling constantly, 4 days a week, sometimes 5. Walsh Strategic Solutions now had 32 employees and revenue of $6.2 million annually. David's personal income was $580,000. We'd been married 19 years. We had 3 children. We lived in a $1.4 million house. From the outside, we had everything. But I was lonely. Desperately, achingly lonely. David was never home. When he was home, he was on his phone or his laptop, responding to work emails, preparing for presentations, networking with potential clients. We hadn't had a real conversation in months. We hadn't been on a date in over a year. We hadn't had sex in 6 months. I tried to talk to him about it. David, I feel like we're not connected anymore. We're living parallel lives. Can we carve out some time? Maybe go away for a weekend, just the 2 of us? He looked at me with barely concealed irritation. Jen, I'm building a business. Do you understand how much pressure I'm under? How many people are depending on me? I can't just take a weekend off. You took 2 weeks off last month for that golf trip with your college friends. That was different. That was networking. Those guys are potential clients. Everything was always about work, about the business, about David's career. What about us, I asked. What about our marriage? Our marriage is fine. You're being dramatic. I work hard so you can have this life, this house, the kids' private schools, the vacations. You should be grateful instead of complaining. Grateful. I should be grateful. I went upstairs to our bedroom, locked myself in the bathroom, and cried. Silently, because I didn't want the kids to hear. I looked at myself in the mirror, 46 years old, lines around my eyes, gray hair I'd stopped coloring, wearing yoga pants and an old Northwestern t-shirt. Who was I? What had I become? I was nobody, nothing. David's wife, Emma and James and Sophie's mom, the woman who kept the household running while everyone else lived their lives. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay next to David, who was snoring softly, completely unbothered by our conversation, and thought about the past 19 years. I'd given up my career for our family. I'd sacrificed my earning potential, my professional identity, my financial independence. I'd worked 7 days a week for 19 years without a single day off. I'd made David's career possible by handling everything else in his life, and he thought I should be grateful. Something shifted in me that night. A cold clarity settled over me like a blanket of snow. I realized that David didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as a service provider, a live-in nanny, housekeeper, and assistant who worked for free. And if I was a service provider, my services had value. Market value, quantifiable value. I got out of bed at 2 a.m., went downstairs to the home office and opened my laptop. I started researching. What does a nanny cost? A housekeeper, a personal assistant, an event planner, a property manager, a bookkeeper? I created a spreadsheet. I listed every service I'd provided for the past 19 years. I calculated hours. I researched market rates. I documented everything. Childcare, full-time nanny for 3 children, 2005 to 2025. Average cost in Chicago, $55,000 per year for 1 child, $75,000 for 2, $90,000 for 3. Total, $1,405,000. Household management, coordination of all household operations, maintenance, repairs, services. Market rate for a household manager, $65,000 per year. Total, $1,235,000. Personal assistant services, calendar management, correspondence, event planning, gift purchasing, travel arrangements for family trips. Market rate, $50,000 per year. Total, $950,000. Business support, marketing materials, bookkeeping, administrative support for Walsh Strategic Solutions, 2007 to 2012. Market rate, $45,000 per year. Total, $225,000. Meal planning and preparation, 3 meals per day for family of 5. Market rate for a private chef, $50,000 per year. Total, $950,000. I kept going. Laundry services, shopping services, transportation services, home organization, educational support and tutoring, healthcare coordination. By 4 a.m., I had a comprehensive list of every service I'd provided for 19 years. The total market value, $2,347,000. $2,347,000. That's what David would have paid if he'd hired professionals to do everything I'd done for free. I sat back in the desk chair, staring at the number on my screen. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. David claimed I'd contributed nothing. I'd contributed nearly $2.5 million of unpaid labor. While he was building his $6.2 million business, I was building the infrastructure that made his success possible. I saved the spreadsheet, created a backup, emailed it to myself at an address David didn't know about, and I kept researching. Over the next 3 months, I gathered evidence. I documented everything. I saved financial records showing David's income growth over our marriage. I compiled emails where I'd provided business support to Walsh Strategic Solutions. I found old files of marketing materials I'd created. I photographed the household management systems I'd built, the master calendar, the budget spreadsheets, the detailed schedules. I was methodical, careful. I didn't tell David what I was doing. I didn't tell anyone. I just quietly built my case. In June 2019, I found something that changed everything. David had left his laptop open on the kitchen counter. He'd gone upstairs to shower. I shouldn't have looked. Some part of me knew I wouldn't like what I found, but I looked anyway. His email was open, and right there, at the top of his inbox, was an email from someone named Michelle Richardson. The subject line, "Can't wait to see you in Boston." I clicked it. My hands were shaking. "David, last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. 3 more days until Boston. I've already booked us a suite at the Mandarin Oriental. Bring that tie I like. I'll bring the handcuffs. Wink. M." I stood there, reading those words over and over. The bathroom upstairs, water still running. My husband in the shower, washing off evidence of another woman. I clicked on her name. Previous emails loaded, dozens of them, going back months, no, years. The earliest was from November 2017, 2 years. David had been having an affair for 2 years. I read through them all, every single email. Michelle Richardson was a client, CEO of a mid-sized tech company that Walsh Strategic Solutions had been consulting for since 2017. They'd met at a conference, started emailing about business, then the emails got personal, then intimate, then explicit. They'd been sleeping together for 2 years, hotels in different cities, always when David was traveling for work. Boston, San Francisco, New York, Miami, all those business trips, at least half of them included time with Michelle. The water upstairs stopped. I heard the shower door open. I closed the laptop, walked calmly to the kitchen island, poured myself coffee. My hands were steady now, ice water in my veins. David came downstairs 15 minutes later, hair damp, wearing one of his expensive suits. "Morning," he said, grabbing his laptop. "I've got an early meeting. Won't be home until late." "Where's the meeting?" "Downtown. Then I'm having dinner with a potential client." He was lying. His calendar, which I still managed, showed no dinner meeting. He was seeing Michelle. "Have a good day," I said. He kissed my cheek. A perfunctory gesture, meaningless. Then he left. I sat at the kitchen island for a long time after he'd gone. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. I just sat there thinking. David was cheating on me with a woman who probably had a career, an income, an identity beyond David's wife. A woman who met him in hotels and sent him flirty emails and made him feel young and exciting. Meanwhile, I was at home, doing his laundry, managing his household, raising his children, making his life possible. And he had the audacity to tell me I'd contributed nothing. I opened my laptop, went to the email I'd found, and I forwarded every single message to my private email address, every explicit photo Michelle had sent him, every dirty message, every hotel receipt he'd submitted for reimbursement. Then I called a divorce attorney. Her name was Patricia Holloway. She was 53 years old, a partner at Davidson and Associates, and had a reputation for absolutely destroying unfaithful husbands in divorce proceedings. "Tell me everything," she said at our first meeting. I did. The 19-year marriage, my abandoned career, the 3 children, David's growing income, his business, my unpaid labor, and then the affair. "I want to document the value of my contributions," I told her, "not just for alimony. I want the court to understand that I wasn't supported by David. I was working. I was just never paid." Patricia smiled. "I like the way you think. Show me what you've got." I showed her my spreadsheet, the 200-page analysis I'd been building over 3 months, every service, every hour, every dollar of market value. She read through it, her smile growing wider. "This is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. No one has ever walked into my office with something like this. Will it work? It's going to do more than work. It's going to change how the judge views your entire marriage. Courts typically look at direct financial contributions, who earned what, who paid for what. But this shows that non-financial contributions have concrete, quantifiable value. We're going to argue that you provided $2.3 million worth of services that enabled David to build his business and accumulate wealth. You're entitled to half of everything he has, not as charity or alimony, but as payment for services rendered." I felt something unfamiliar rising in my chest. Hope, power, justice. There's one more thing, I said. He's been having an affair for 2 years. I have all the emails, photos, hotel receipts. Patricia's smile turned predatory. Even better. Illinois is a no-fault divorce state, but evidence of dissipation of marital assets, spending significant money on an affair, can affect the division of property. Every dollar he spent on hotels, dinners, gifts for his mistress is a dollar he took from the marital estate. We can argue he owes you that money. How much do you think he spent? Based on what you're showing me, probably $150,000 over 2 years. High-end hotels, expensive dinners, jewelry. He was funding an entire secret relationship with marital assets. $150,000. That's what my marriage was worth to David. That's what he'd been willing to spend on another woman while telling me I should be grateful for the life he provided. Let's destroy him, I said. Patricia's smile was cold and sharp. With pleasure. I filed for divorce on July 15, 2019. David was served papers at his office. He came home that night looking like he'd been punched in the stomach. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, waving the papers at me. "It's a divorce petition. I'm divorcing you." "Why? What happened?" "We can work on whatever's wrong. You've been sleeping with Michelle Richardson for 2 years. Don't insult me by lying." His face went white. "How did you? Your email. You left your laptop open. I saw everything." He sat down heavily on the couch. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, "It didn't mean anything. It was just sex. It doesn't change how I feel about you. Don't," my voice was ice, "don't you dare try to minimize this. You spent 2 years lying to me. You took money from our marriage to fund hotels and dinners and gifts for another woman. You violated our vows, our trust, our family. And you have the nerve to say it didn't mean anything? Jen, please, think about the kids. Think about what divorce will do to them. I've thought about nothing else for weeks. The kids will be fine. What won't be fine is them growing up thinking this is what marriage looks like, what love looks like. I won't model this dysfunction for my daughters. I won't teach my son that this is how you treat a partner. What do you want? Money? I'll give you money. We don't have to get divorced. This isn't about money. This is about respect, about value, about recognizing that I contributed to this marriage just as much as you did. You told me I contributed nothing. You told me I should be grateful. You made me feel like I was worth nothing because I didn't have a paycheck. I never said that. You said it constantly. Maybe not in those exact words, but in every action, every dismissal, every time you treated me like hired help instead of a partner. David's shock was morphing into anger. Fine. You want a divorce? You'll get a divorce. But don't expect to walk away with half of everything I built. You didn't build my business. I did. No, I said calmly. I built the foundation your business stands on. I provided $2.3 million worth of services that made your success possible. I documented everything. Every hour of childcare, every hour of household management, every hour I spent supporting your business. I calculated the market value of 20 years of unpaid labor, and I'm going to present it in court. He laughed, actually laughed. You're going to tell a judge you think housework is worth millions? Good luck with that. We'll see. The next 6 months were brutal. David hired an aggressive attorney, Marcus Chen, a partner at a top Chicago firm known for protecting wealthy husbands in divorce proceedings. Marcus's strategy was clear from the first mediation session. Portray me as a gold digger trying to exploit Illinois' equitable distribution laws. Paint me as someone who'd chosen not to work and now wanted to profit from that choice. Minimize my contributions and maximize David's. My client built a multi-million-dollar business from nothing, Marcus said at mediation. Mrs. Walsh chose to leave the workforce. No one forced her. She's been living a very comfortable life, thanks to Mr. Walsh's hard work. Now she wants to be rewarded for making dinner and driving kids to soccer practice? That's not how divorce law works. Patricia didn't even blink. Your client's business exists because my client sacrificed her career to provide full-time childcare, household management, and administrative support. She didn't choose to leave the workforce. She was pushed out by the impossibility of maintaining a demanding career while being the only parent handling all childcare and household responsibilities. Mr. Walsh's income is a joint marital asset because it was only possible through Mrs. Walsh's unpaid labor. Mediation failed. We were going to trial. In the months before trial, Patricia and I prepared relentlessly. We refined the economic analysis. We gathered expert witnesses, economists who testified about the value of domestic labor, employment specialists who explained how career gaps affect lifetime earnings, household management professionals who confirmed market rates for the services I'd provided. We subpoenaed David's business records. We documented how much Walsh Strategic Solutions had grown during our marriage. We showed that in 2005, when I left my career, David's income was $125,000. By 2019, it was $580,000. The business was valued at $8.4 million. Total marital assets, $12.3 million. Half of that was $6.15 million. That's what I was asking for, my share of what we'd built together. David's attorney argued I deserved far less. Maybe $800,000 total. Maybe $4,000 a month in alimony for 5 years. He argued that most of the business value was due to David's efforts, not mine, that I'd been supported and should be grateful for what I'd received. The trial lasted 3 days. David testified first. He was polished, professional, sympathetic. He talked about how hard he'd worked to build his business, how many sacrifices he'd made, how many hours he'd put in. "Mr. Walsh," Patricia said during cross-examination, "how many hours per week did you work on average? 60, maybe 70? And who picked up your children from school?" "My wife." "Who managed their doctor appointments?" "My wife." "Who handled your household finances, paid your bills, managed your home maintenance?" "My wife." "But who created the marketing materials for Walsh Strategic Solutions when you first started the business?" "My wife helped with that, but yes or no, Mr. Walsh? Did your wife create your logo, your website, your initial marketing materials?" "Yes." "Who managed your calendar, scheduled your meetings, handled your business correspondence for the first 5 years of Walsh Strategic Solutions?" "My wife did some of that." "Some or all of it?" David's jaw tightened. "Most of it." "So while you were meeting with clients and developing strategy, your wife was handling the administrative work of running a business?" "She was helping me, helping you without pay, while also caring for 3 small children. Would you call that work, Mr. Walsh?" "It's different." "Different how?" "If you'd hired someone to do that administrative work, you would have paid them, correct?" "Yes." "How much would you have paid an administrative assistant in 2007? "I don't know, 40, 45,000? And a nanny for 2 children? Maybe 70,000. "So in 2007 alone, the services your wife provided for free would have cost you approximately $115,000 if you'd hired professionals." David said nothing. "Mr. Walsh, did you ever thank your wife for making your business possible?" "I thanked her many times. Did you ever offer to pay her for her work?" "We were married. That's not how marriage works." "No? How does marriage work, Mr. Walsh?" "Your wife sacrifices her career to enable yours, works 7 days a week without pay, and in return you, what? Cheat on her for 2 years?" "Objection!" Marcus Chen was on his feet. "Relevance?" "I'll allow it," Judge Morrison said. "Mr. Walsh, you were having an extramarital affair?" David's face was red. "Yes." "For how long?" 2 years. "During which time you spent marital assets on hotels, dinners, and gifts for another woman?" Yes." "How much did you spend on this affair?" Marcus objected again, but Judge Morrison wanted an answer. David's business credit card records, which Patricia had subpoenaed, showed exactly how much he'd spent. "Approximately $147,000, David finally admitted. The courtroom was silent. $147,000 of marital funds, Patricia said, spent on an affair, while telling your wife she should be grateful for the life you provided. No further questions. Then it was my turn to testify. I was nervous walking to the witness stand. My hands were shaking. But once I started talking, I found my voice. I told my story. Northwestern graduate with a promising marketing career. Met David when we were both ambitious young professionals, got married as equals, had children. Left my career because it was just for a few years. It was never just a few years, I said. Once you leave, you can't go back. I tried. In 2018, I applied to dozens of jobs. I got 2 interviews. Both interviewers looked at my resume like it was garbage. 13 years out of the workforce might as well be a lifetime. My degree, my early career experience, none of it mattered. I was unmarketable. "Mrs. Walsh," Patricia asked gently, "did you choose to leave your career?" I thought I did. But looking back, I don't think I had a real choice. David's career required constant travel. Someone had to be home with the children. Childcare cost nearly as much as my salary. I was exhausted, drowning, failing at both work and motherhood. David's career was accelerating while mine was stalling. It seemed logical that I should be the one to step back. "Do you regret that decision?" I took a deep breath. Yes and no. I don't regret the time I spent with my children. I don't regret being there for every milestone, every bedtime story, every school event. But I regret that I was told it was temporary when it was permanent. I regret that I gave up my financial independence. I regret that I became economically dependent on someone who didn't value my work. Tell the court about your economic analysis. And I did. For 2 hours, I walked through my 200-page analysis, every service I'd provided, every hour I'd worked, every market rate calculation. If David had hired professionals to do what I did for free, it would have cost him $2.3 million. While I was providing those services, David's income grew from $125,000 to $580,000. His business grew from nothing to $8.4 million. That growth didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened because I was handling everything else in his life. David's attorney cross-examined me aggressively. He tried to make me sound greedy, vindictive, calculating. He suggested my analysis was creative accounting rather than legitimate valuation. But I didn't break. I stayed calm. I presented my evidence. I answered every question with facts. "Mrs. Walsh," Marcus Chen said with obvious contempt, "do you really expect this court to believe you deserve millions of dollars for cooking dinner and doing laundry?" "I expect this court to recognize that domestic labor has value, that the work I did, raising 3 children, managing a household, supporting a business, was real work. Work that enabled my husband to build a fortune while I accumulated nothing in my own name. I don't want millions for cooking and laundry. I want half of what we built together, because it was built together whether David wants to acknowledge my contribution or not." After 3 days of testimony, both sides rested. Judge Morrison said she'd review the evidence and issue a ruling within 30 days. Those 30 days were the longest of my life. I'd presented the strongest case possible, but I didn't know if it would be enough. Courts don't typically recognize domestic labor as having the kind of concrete value I'd calculated. I was asking Judge Morrison to see marriage differently, to understand that unpaid work is still work, that enabling a spouse's career is a contribution, that my sacrifices had real economic value. The ruling came on January 30th, 2020. Patricia and I sat on one side of the courtroom. David and Marcus sat on the other. Judge Morrison entered, and we all stood. "I've reviewed all the evidence presented," she began. "This is one of the most unusual cases I've seen in 30 years on the bench. Mrs. Walsh's economic analysis is extraordinary, thorough, well-researched, and compelling. She's done something I've never seen before. She's quantified the market value of domestic labor in a way that's difficult to dismiss." My heart was pounding. Mrs. Walsh sacrificed a promising career to enable Mr. Walsh's success. She provided childcare, household management, and administrative support that would have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars if Mr. Walsh had hired professionals. Her contribution to the marital estate is undeniable. Judge Morrison looked directly at David. "Mr. Walsh, you testified that your wife contributed nothing. The evidence shows the opposite. Your business exists because your wife handled everything else in your life. Your income grew because you had the freedom to focus entirely on your career while your wife managed your home, your children, and your administrative work. To say she contributed nothing is not only inaccurate, it's insulting." I saw David's jaw tighten. Furthermore, Mr. Walsh spent $147,000 of marital funds on an extramarital affair. This constitutes dissipation of marital assets. Mrs. Walsh is entitled to reimbursement for half of that amount plus damages. Judge Morrison outlined her ruling. Total marital assets, $12.3 million. This included the value of Walsh Strategic Solutions, $8.4 million, our home, $1.6 million, retirement accounts, $1.8 million, and other investments, $500,000. Division. Mrs. Walsh would receive $6.15 million, exactly half of the marital estate. This would be paid through a combination of assets. She'd receive the house, $1.6 million, half the retirement accounts, $900,000, and a buyout of her share of the business, $3.65 million to be paid over 5 years at 4% interest. Dissipation. Mr. Walsh would pay an additional $73,500 to Mrs. Walsh, half of what he'd spent on his affair. Child support. $8,500 per month until all 3 children reached 18 or graduated college. Alimony. None. Judge Morrison ruled that the equitable division of assets was sufficient, especially given that Mrs. Walsh was receiving her fair share of what they built together. Total amount I'd receive, $6,223,500 plus child support. I sat there, stunned. I'd won. Not just won, I'd prevailed completely. Judge Morrison had accepted my argument that domestic labor has value, that my contribution to our marriage was equal to David's, that I deserved half of everything we'd built. David looked like he'd been hit by a truck. Your Honor, this is outrageous. Mr. Walsh, you may file an appeal if you wish, but I'm confident in this ruling. Your wife's analysis is sound, her contribution is clear, and the division of assets is equitable. This court is adjourned. Outside the courtroom, Patricia was beaming. You did it. You actually did it. This ruling is going to be cited in divorce cases for years. You just changed how courts value domestic labor. I was shaking, not from fear or sadness, but from relief, from vindication, from the realization that I'd fought for my worth and won. David's attorney filed an appeal. It was denied 3 months later. The ruling stood. In March 2020, I received my first payment, $2.5 million from the liquidation of various marital assets. The remaining payments for my share of the business would come over the next 5 years. I bought a smaller house in Wilmette, 3 bedrooms, 1,800 square feet, plenty of space for me and the kids during my custody time. I paid cash, no mortgage. For the first time in my adult life, I owned something that was entirely mine. I invested the rest carefully, working with a financial advisor to ensure I'd have security and income for the rest of my life. I set up college funds for all 3 children, fully funded no matter what happened, and I started working again. Not in marketing, that ship had sailed, but I started a consulting business helping women navigate divorce, particularly women who'd left careers for family. I helped them calculate the economic value of their contributions. I connected them with attorneys like Patricia. I taught them how to advocate for themselves. My business is called Domestic Equity Consulting. In the past 4 years, I've helped 137 women through divorce proceedings. Every single one has walked away with a fairer settlement than they would have gotten otherwise. 3 of those settlements have been covered in legal journals. My methods, my economic analysis, are now being taught in family law courses. I've rebuilt my life. Not the life I had before. I'm not 24 and ambitious and climbing a corporate ladder. I'm 46, a divorced mother of 3, running a small consulting business. But it's mine. My work, my income, my identity, no one can take it away. No one can tell me it has no value. My relationship with David is cordial now, for the kids' sake. He pays his child support on time. He's civil when we do custody exchanges. His business is still thriving. Losing $3.65 million didn't destroy Walsh Strategic Solutions like he claimed it would. And Michelle Richardson? Their affair ended about 6 months after the divorce was finalized. Turns out David's appeal as a cheating spouse was limited. Last I heard, he's dating someone new, another successful professional woman. I hope she doesn't make the same mistakes I did. My kids are doing well. Emma is 21 now, a junior at Northwestern, my alma mater. She's studying economics and women's studies. She tells me she wants to research the economic impact of unpaid domestic labor. She watched my divorce case and saw how her father treated me, and it shaped her understanding of gender, work, and value. I'm proud of her. James is 18, just started at the University of Michigan. He's studying business, wants to be an entrepreneur. But he tells me he'll always value the invisible work that supports success. He saw what I did for our family, even if his father didn't. Sophie is 14, in 8th grade. She's brilliant and fierce and takes no one's nonsense. She told me recently, "Mom, I'm never going to stop working. I'm never going to let someone make me financially dependent on them." Good, I told her, but if you do choose to leave the workforce for any reason, make sure you have a plan. Make sure you know your worth. It's been 4 years since I walked into that courtroom with my 200-page analysis, 4 years since I proved that my contributions had value, 4 years since I stopped being invisible. I'm not bitter. Okay, that's a lie. I'm a little bitter. I lost 20 years to a marriage where I was undervalued and underappreciated. I lost my career, my earning potential, my professional identity. I can't get those years back, but I got something else. I got justice. I got recognition. I got my fair share of what we built together. And most importantly, I got to show my children, especially my daughters, that their work has value even if it's unpaid, that they deserve respect and recognition for their contributions, that they should never settle for being invisible. To anyone watching this who's in a similar situation, who left a career for family, who's been told they don't work, who's been made to feel like their contributions don't matter, your work has value. Document it, quantify it, fight for it. You deserve equity, not charity, not gratitude, equity. Thank you for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share this video. Tell me in the comments where you're from and whether you've ever felt invisible in your own life. And if this video helped you, please consider leaving a super thanks. It helps me continue this work of advocating for domestic equity. Remember, invisible labor is still labor. Unpaid work is still work. Your contributions have value, even if the person benefiting from them refuses to see it. Don't let anyone tell you that you've contributed nothing. You're worth more than you know.